Today we're here to talk about the remake of one of the more beloved video games ever made, Mafia. Originally released in 2002, the remake, or otherwise known as the Definitive Edition, that released in 2020, almost nails everything I was looking for when it comes to the Mafia and organized crime lifestyle. It focuses on the main character, Tommy Angelo, and his entrance, lifestyle, and exit of the Mafia world. I did 2 playthroughs of Mafia for this video, and I played this on my PC and it ran shockingly well even with how I was recording it, so any hitches that I had I'm going to blame on my computer and not the game. Mainly the hitches occurred when I would pause the game and go to the options menu, or when I would take cover on something and try to immediately vault over it. I don't remember that happening on my first playthrough. This video is going to be mainly focusing on the story of the game, what it does right as well as some mishaps that the game may have. I do talk about the gameplay and other aspects as it comes up in the story, but I do also have a smaller section for that later in the video. This video will have timestamps in the description if you need to watch it in separate parts. Because of how the story takes place in this game, this video is going to be split between each yearly section of the game, so basically 5 parts of the story. But with that out of the way, let's get on with the story. The game opens up with a beautifully rendered cutscene showing off the game's new visuals of the city Lost Haven. I have no clue what tech they're using to make this game run, but it is by far one of the most visually impressive games I've ever played. That includes the Demon's Souls remake and Cyberpunk 2077 when it actually works. You are introduced to the main character, Tommy Angelo, as well as a detective named Norman in the year 1938. The game immediately tells you that your character is eventually going to be a narc for the cops. The main part of the story is Tommy telling Detective Norman his story of how he first started up and where he is now. Also, this is a great showcase of the fantastic attention to detail and voice acting.
How long you been in town?
3 years. Caught my teeth in Empire Bay.
Well, they handed you the Morello case. Right out of the gate.
That's what the paper says, ain't it?
However, there are some instances that is rather poor compared to the main cast. Flashback to 1930. You are just a basic taxi driver, literally forced into helping the mob make a getaway. Here's where you see Sam and Polly, the 2 main buddies of Tommy over the years. When I first started playing, I was doing mouse and keyboard, but within an hour or so I went to controller, so some footage may seem shaky early on, just FYI. The driving in Mafia feels mostly great, though at times you may get your car stuck on random geometry or feel underpowered getting up a hill, but that is mostly part due to the game trying to feel area appropriate and with the car's physics and handling. Though it can get annoying at times getting stuck on a pole that most games would just break. Eventually, you make your way to the bar, get paid for helping them escape as well as keeping your mouth shut. It does build some slight tension as it makes it seem like they may try and off you for possibly seeing too much. Also, early on is where I rather first disliked the voice acting for Polly.
I don't want any trouble. Well, you got trouble. Drive. How the hell they knew we'd be there? It doesn't matter now. We just gotta lose them. How many cars we got following?
But he did grow on me quickly as the game went on. Tommy didn't want to be a part of that lifestyle though. He got paid, fixed the car, and still had some money left over. Though quickly he realized he didn't want to be a taxi driver anymore as the typical people he would drive around are ignorant, and then shortly after he got attacked for helping Salieri's men escape and get to the bar. This is also where I felt I had just some trouble with the mouse and keyboard controls, that I kinda just stood there when I was told to run, unsure of what caused that. But just like that, Tommy is in with the mob and meets the Don. I don't know why, but something about Don Salieri feels off to me. I believe the voice actor does right with his performance, but it doesn't feel like he has the same boss feeling that others would have.
What do they call you, son?
Thomas. Thomas Angelo, sir.
Frank told me you ran into some trouble?
Yes, sir. My cab got smashed up pretty good.
Morello's thugs went after him on account of Tommy helping us.
This, taxi. That's your livelihood?
But I am comparing him to Marlon Brandon in The Godfather or other movie Dons. Salieri feels like someone's dad trying to control their adult kids, but that's just me, it mostly works. But moving on, you get to destroy some competition's cars for damaging your taxi. The competition in this game is Don Morello. He and Salieri have been basically at war for years, but it's mostly just a turf war. Nothing too major as of yet. The mission is basically a tutorial for what's to come. This is also the mission that pretty much made me decide to switch the controller for the rest of the game. By doing this mission and helping Salieri, you're basically all the way in with the mob. It also has a well done hazing moment of Sam and Polly trying to break Tommy.
Yeah, seems like it's not too hard.
Not hard. Kinda not hard.
I don't know. Comes natural to you guys. Don't see why it can't come natural to me.
So anyone could do this. Me and Polly, we've been working these streets for years. You come in and you think you know it all.
I'm not saying that, Sam.
You've been a day on the job, pal. You haven't seen what we do. You haven't seen how we do it.
Sam, I think you oughta...
No.
Similar to the one from Goodfellas. It was a nice touch and good character building for the main trio. Doing basic shakedowns is typical for any mob game, and thankfully it is short-lived in the game, as it is basically one mission worth. It is also the main tutorial for the shooting in the game as well. This is also a good time to mention that for the purposes of recording this footage, I played the game on easy. When playing on normal or hard, you can go down pretty extremely quickly. It's definitely realistic, but you can catch a stray bullet and have no health for a while until you find a health pickup station. Also, this is a good moment of seeing me struggle with the controls for a few minutes and somehow living. Tommy has now seen what it's like to be part of the mob. He has killed men, taken money, and destroyed cars. He had his first mental thought wondering if he should stay in or go, but he already is all the way in. Morello is much stronger half of the mob in Lost Haven. After several missions, you finally get introduced to Morello in a cutscene, and he is already way more intimidating than Salieri. He kills a boxer in broad daylight, in front of citizens and cops, and no one does anything. That's the kind of power he has over the city compared to Salieri. But then some time passes, and it's 1932. Here comes the infamous racing mission that was in the original 2002 version of Mafia. I forgot to mention earlier, but there is a character named Ralphie that has a speech impediment that feels a tad forced in the game, but I guess I do relate to that, so I don't mind. He tells Tommy where to go at times, and who to go to at the track to get started with the racing mission. Also, you are tasked with sabotaging the competition's race car in order to help the prize driver, but Morello decided to rough up the driver, so it's up to you to save the day. This race is extremely easy, even on higher difficulties. I guess they did listen to feedback for the original game. It may seem kinda long, but there's some Indiana Jones sounding music playing to me, or like some fake adventure movie soundtrack. No disrespect to the composer and people that are in charge of the soundtrack, but that's all I can hear the entire time I did this race. Once the race is done, you gotta bring Drunk Polly back home. Nothing too major in the beginning parts of the 1932 section, and if you aren't a huge fan of racing or driving, it may turn you off. The next two chapters feel slightly more filler for Mafia. You're fully introduced to the love interest, Sarah, and need to walk her home. She's a really great character even with how little she's in the game. She was being harassed by some local punks and you get to deal with that while also starting the bond between Tommy and Sarah. Following this incident, you get to fully deal with the punks at their home turf. You get to find out where they are and then hunt them down. It's a really great looking shootout section and it really shows off the engine in all its glory, with the explosions and rain effects all working together. Here's also where Tommy begins to question how far he wants to keep going with this mob lifestyle, with the hesitation of killing the final punks after the car accident. It may also be telling that I don't remember their names, so that's why I keep referring to them as punks. Anyways, it is done pretty well, with animation and everything. You can tell he is having adjustment issues flashing through his mind, and then Polly ends up finally killing the two. At least I thought so. One survived and you have to deal with the aftermath of him surviving as well as some major tasks from Salieri. The next mission is one of my favorites. You get to take down a local gentleman's club and then take out the surviving punks from the previous mission. It is a well-made layout of a level. It was a fun shootout, even with how brutal it may start off. But there is a hidden little goal in this mission that Sam asks of you. There is a girl that was giving out information of Salieri's mob. Sam was really close to the girl named Michelle and asked you to let her live and ask her to leave town. She's extremely grateful of being allowed to live, and this comes up later in the game, but in just a throwaway line of sorts. You didn't have to escape the cops and get to the church where the survivor is from earlier. I don't understand how you just happen to get there from jumping over the rooftops on accident, but oh well. This escape is one of the hardest moments in the game playing on other difficulties. There's a myriad of cops there that take your health to empty extremely quickly. My first playthrough took about 5 attempts to escape, but on easy it was just once thankfully. It was a fun little sequence, though I always feel weird about anything shootout related at a church. Perhaps I'm superstitious. But with that, 1932 is done and some more time passes. In the switch of time, you learn that they had to lay low after the church shootout and they didn't get to do much while Morello's getting a bit more rackets going. Frank and Tommy get some more time together, and you learn how long Frank and Salieri have been together, and that Salieri killed Frank's dog when they were younger. It is a cool little bit of backstory to see, and I wish the game had more of that. But as 1933 gets going, you're in one of my favorite levels in the game. It is a shootout at a barn at night, with some great looking lightning and rain effects. It was so much so that this is the point where I turned most of the HUD off in order to make it look a tad bit better. But it may just be me. Hopefully YouTube compression doesn't lower the quality of this section too much. You are here to get some alcohol because back then there was still prohibition. When looking up older footage of this level, it definitely makes me happy that they improved the combat in this, as it seems like this level specifically was a bit rough back in 2002. Sam gets shot and you have to help rescue him, and this is where I finally warmed up to Polly's voice acting.
Sammy. Oh, Jesus, what have they done to you? I got clipped. Christ, that's a lot of blood. Can you walk? No, I don't think so. Okay, just hang on. I'll go get the truck, then we'll take you to the doctor. Hey, you're gonna make it, Sam.
Once finished, Tommy proposes to Sarah in the most underwhelming way possible, but they seem good together. He definitely likes going back home to her for sure. And here's where you learn that Frank could possibly be a rat for the FBI in Morello. You get one of those wonderful tailing missions that I never understand why you don't get caught. As long as you are just outside the zone, they won't see you. Not like they can't look behind them and see that there's a car stopping oddly in the middle of the road or anything. Anyways, you follow Frank to an airfield and he's just there trying to escape with his family. On my first playthrough, I had a major shootout here, but on this playthrough, I was able to sneak all the way through the arena to the hangar. This will come up later, but I wanted to mention it now. Anyways, once you get to Frank, Tommy decides to let him go once he sees that he's with his family, again showing that Tommy may not be all in as he thinks when it comes to this lifestyle. There's a big funeral, and Salieri never asks a single question, possibly a bit heartbroken of what happened. But there is some respect from Morello's behalf as he does show up to the funeral. This scene also tells the player that possibly Morello and Salieri were close back in the day. The next mission is my least favorite in the game for several reasons. You're told to go rob a safe with a man named Salvatore who is full Italian, just off the boat. He's probably my least favorite character in voice acting in the entire game. He sounds like someone that's just reading a script for an Italian to English play.
Please, understand. Entriamo dal labirinto senza farci sentire né vedere. La casaforte è dietro un dipinto al primo piano.
You get to sneak around a maze and then go get to a safe. A pretty easy mission unless you get caught in the maze. Also, this mission made me realize that I'm a terrible person because there were some non-combative people in there and I may have attacked them too. Anyways, once done, Salvatore is out of the game and then it's time to get some more whiskey in the next mission. You go to a parking garage and get some whiskey while being ambushed by Morello's men. It is a decent combat arena, and Gates, the guy who is giving you the whiskey, is a pretty good short-lived character. I mean, he lives in the mission, but it's the only time he is here. If you know your history, then you may also know why 1933 is a bad time to get into the illegal sale of alcohol. But right after this mission, some more time has passed, Prohibition is done, and it was time for Salieri to get some more business opportunities over time. This is also when Morello and Salieri go into an all-out war. Carlo, one of the other members of the crew, called in sick and now it's time for you to take Salieri to get some food. Basic, I know, but then all hell broke loose. Morello's men show up and start attacking the restaurant and killing everyone inside. You and Morello make an escape and believe that Carlo was the one that caused the ambush. Once the men are taken care of, they go after Carlo and kill him. This game is rated mature, but I'm shocked they didn't go into detail to show Salieri stomping on his head. But then that may just be me, because I saw Game of Thrones again recently and they just show everything there. Up next is a quick little steamboat mission. It is nice to see, and there's a similar one in Mafia 3, but to a much bigger scale. You need to take out a politician named Gelati during a fireworks show. I like this mission, even though you shouldn't have been able to make it out alive. But Sam and Polly show up and it's home free. Pretty bold of the crew to pull off, but I feel this level could have been expanded on. Sergio Morello is the second in command, and Morello's brother. He's also extremely lucky in general. The plan is to blow up his car when he goes to get in it, but unfortunately, his wife is the one that starts the car. Tommy is also on the phone with his wife when this happens, and you can hear her freaking out, but you never actually see them talk about this in the game after this event. You end up hunting Sergio down shortly after this and chase him again to finally kill him. This entire mission should also show how much that the mob life is wearing down on Tommy. He's extremely shaken up with what happened to Sergio's wife, and stops Polly from killing an innocent person to get Sergio. He definitely seems to be close to getting done here, but with most of the competition done, Morello goes into hiding, and there's a small window to finally take him out. It is a huge chase through the city, with multiple stops and shootouts to take care of, in one instance where Polly and Sam kept yelling, "Behind you!" over and over, and yet I'd never seen anyone.
Behind you! Behind you! Behind you! Behind you!
This is just a random nitpick, but it happened for like over a minute. Anyways, Morello boards a plane, and like Tyrese Gibson in Fast and Furious, you shoot it down. End of 1935, and on to the current year of 1938, the home stretch. The final missions are mostly all connected to one another, so I'm going to go through them all together. You have to take out a man who's running for mayor, since I guess it would make their life more difficult. I actually miss the reasoning behind going after him, honestly. You go to an abandoned prison that has a ton of homeless people staying in it, as this was an area where that was rampant. You get a sniper and take him out. Once escaped, it is the home stretch. Paulie tells Tommy and Sam that he wants to rob a bank while they're on the way to get some shipping crates with cigars and diamonds in them. Both Tommy and Sam say it's a bad idea to do it without talking to Salieri first, which makes sense, but he probably could have done it regardless of telling them. Once you recover the diamonds and cigars, you discover that it was actually dope and that Salieri kept it from everyone. None of them want to get into that field as it is too risky and deadly for all involved. Well, Paulie and Tommy decide that they're basically done with this lifestyle and go rob the bank instead. This is one of the more tense car chases in the game, even on easy difficulty. It takes a while to escape the police, but you make out a huge score. Tommy goes home to celebrate with his wife and then tells her that they may be leaving soon and go on vacation. However, Tommy goes to get a share from Paulie and finds out that he's dead. Phone rings and it is Sam. He convinces Tommy to meet up with him and pretend that he's a friend when in reality, he's the one that killed Paulie. He told Salieri what happened with the bank robbery, Frank, and even the girl Michelle from earlier in the game. He double-crossed everyone and is now trying to kill you. But this isn't a Rockstar game, so you survive and kill off Sam and his entire army of men. This is when you go back to the coffee house scene with Detective Norman and get the final cutscenes. Salieri and crew, including Tommy, is in jail. Tommy serves 8 years before being able to be released, while everyone else stays behind bars. Flash forward to the year 1951, and Tommy's daughter is getting married, and you see Tommy giving a speech. If you don't want a small scene spoiled for Mafia 2, now is the time to skip slightly ahead. Tommy is watering his yard when Vito and Joe come in for Mafia 2 to kill Tommy. It is a really good way to tie the games in, even though it was always like this before, but they showed it even more since that game was already made. Overall, it's a pretty good story, but it feels like it's missing sections of the story that could have made it better. I wish there was more grunt work being done, more interactions with Sarah, and Tommy's mental state going down for being in the mob. I know it's hard to put that much into the game, but they do improve on that aspect in Mafia 2. When it comes to the gameplay in Mafia, there isn't much variation. The shooting feels mostly pretty good outside of sometimes enemies not having much hit reaction. There's only a few guns in the game, from a few shotguns, pistols, Tommy gun, and a rifle or two. The combat isn't really the draw of the game to me. It definitely keeps the pacing varied at times, but there isn't too much shooting thankfully. You aren't some Rambo guy like in Grand Theft Auto or anything. When it comes to the road to Mafia, every life taken is supposed to matter, and that's the case most of the time in this game except for when they need to have a shooting gallery. Outside of the shooting, there's also a few stealth sections, which are just fine. I had to restart a few times on the same section in the maze during both of my playthroughs, but at least the load times aren't too long and the enemies keep doing the same routines. Plus the stealth takedowns are usually cool to see. It was also nice doing the airport section stealthily, even though I didn't know that was a valid option. Though when returning to the airport later in the game, they say that I was still recovering from the last shootout that we had, even though that never happened on this playthrough. Lastly, there's the driving. It feels pretty tight, at least with a controller. At times I had issues using mouse and keyboard, but it's mostly because I'm unfamiliar using WASD in general. There's also a free ride mode that I've never even bothered with. That just isn't what I go to these kinds of games for. It's there if you're interested in wanting to extend your time with the game. That, and some collectibles you can find like every other game lately. Overall, it's a fun game to play through. Hangar 13 nailed the visuals and the time period to me. It felt like a recreation of an actual city back in the 1930s. The cars and the way people acted and spoke felt correct to me, even though I wasn't alive to experience that time. All I have is movies and books to go off of. At times the game can look incredible, with the correct lighting and time of day, and I'm shocked there isn't more games using this tech. But as time goes on, maybe that will change. There are multiple moments in the game where I just slow down to look at the environment and even stop shooting to look at the effects of an explosion. Mafia, Definitive Edition, is definitely a must-buy game if you're interested in that type of story. I know this video spoiled the entirety of the story, but playing through the game firsthand is extremely well worthwhile to me. Just hearing the cast talk to each other about random mob things or telling stories of that lifestyle is worthwhile alone. But then again, if you've seen every mob movie made, then you've already seen the story. Hell, watching Goodfellas tells basically the same exact story as this one, outside of the jail aspect and how long the time period goes by. But comparing Mafia to other mob-like games is by far one of the best, especially compared to the Xbox 360 era games of Godfather 1 and 2. Though maybe that's a discussion for another time, as I really want to go back and play those again sometime. Thank you for watching. There's going to be much more content coming over the next little while, with some more video game movie reviews, as well as more critiques and analysis. My favorite series ever is about to get re-released in the middle of May, as well as another Resident Evil game, so there's definitely some stuff to look forward to, hopefully sooner than later. But until then, see you on the next one.